Brilliant. So for tonight's talk, I will be joined by three special guests, and our guests all have one thing in common, and that is that they are the front line of hedgerow management, and they are really connected to their hedges. The hedgerows are a key part of the British landscape. They're known for being one of the most biodiverse habitats in the UK, with so not me personally, but over 2,000 species have been discovered along a single stretch of hedgerow down in Devon, which shows just how many species can be in a hedge. But a good hedge has so many benefits. A good hedge will provide water runoff, will provide shade and shelter for livestock, it will sequester carbon, the list goes on and on. But good hedgerows don't exist without good people, whether that's people who are consciously making decisions about planting new hedges. They're thinking about the variety of species they're putting in, where they're putting that hedge and how they're going to plant. And also those people who are actively managing their hedgerows through a rotation system, through rejuvenation such as coppicing or hedge laying. So without these people, our hedges wouldn't be delivering all those wonderful benefits that we know a hedge can deliver. So a hedge without management will become a line of trees, whereas a hedge which has been overmanaged will become really sparse and gappy. So these people that you hear from this evening, they don't just care for our hedges, but they care for our countryside, and they do so by working with nature rather than against it. So our first speaker is Nick Renison. When I visited Nick's farm last year, I fell in love with her hedges, but not just because they were fabulous biodiversity features, which they were, but because they were really thoughtfully planned with a real use and a real purpose to them. So when Nick moved to her farm in the Eden Valley with her husband Reno, she had a vision of traditional sheep farming, one in which hedges and trees weren't really on her mind. However, there was a strong wind and a very exposed hillside, which had other ideas for her farming system. It's Nick's wonderful combination of resilience and willingness to try new things that's led to a regenerative farming system that allows Nick to work both with nature and with her farm. So Nick, if you'd like to come on in and turn on your camera, please.
Hi, can you see me?
Perfect.
Yeah. What a dreadful photo you have there, Annie. Oh my word.
That's yeah, what I
so worried.
We were there.
Let me just share my.
Perfect. I'll stop my share and hopefully that should come through. I may need to make you co-host. It may not have gone through yet. Has that worked? Yeah.
Okay, yes, can you see the cloud?
Yeah.
So evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation, Annie, to come talk the Tree Council. So a little bit about me. I was brought up on a dairy farm in Shropshire, and it was we weren't anti-nature, but it was all to do with production, being efficient, and nature, although we weren't kind of that destructive for nature, it wasn't really on our agenda. And my dad, until a few years ago, had never planted a tree. So we moved to our farm called Canachioff near Renwick in Penrith on the edge of the Pennines in 2012. And the thing we didn't realise that we were buying a farm in the absolute line of the Helm wind, which is the only named wind in the country. And when it comes from the east, it is awful. It's definitely worth a Google because it is the most horrific wind ever. And imagine our farm is a bleak Pennine Hill upland farm. So there's lots of stone walls, not many trees, definitely not many hedges. And we really needed to increase our shelter. So and the farm wasn't that stock proof. So this is just an example of, we joined a HLS scheme, and in 2014, we started putting in some hedges. And I can remember Reno and I having a huge argument when we put this hedge in, because I wanted just a really narrow hedge because we just paid a fortune for this farm. And he wanted this, what now isn't actually a very wide hedge. It's 7 foot wide. He wanted to fence it off, and I just remember having a huge argument with him, with the contractor there. It was all very embarrassing, but he won. So prior to the hedge going there, you'll see in the distance there's some rolls of pig wire, sheep wire. It was just a plain wire fence. So that was 2014. And then it looks really, when you put the tree plants in there, it just looks bleak. We made a kind of, we call them up here a sod kest to plant into. And that gives you a really good take. And we planted away, and I still wasn't that hugely enamored by it. But this photo was in 2020. And by this time, I'd really started loving hedges. But this hedge was our first hedge, and it wasn't that diverse. It was just had a lot of hawthorn in it. It's not that exciting when I look at our hedges now. But it provided really good shelter. And yeah, it's just a tremendous windbreak. So on the farm, we have 90 Aberdeen Angus suckler cows. We used to have a lot of sheep, but we don't have those anymore. So the key part to our farm is our rotational grazing. So we have a big mob of cattle, and then they move around every day onto a new patch of grazing. So what we've done is incorporate new hedges. So some of our fields, this one they're in now is 8 acres, and we've put a hedge straight down the middle of it. So we're using hedges to help our subdivision. This is a hedge that we put in 2 years ago, and we started to incorporate fruit trees in amongst the hedges. And all the previous hedging had been funded by HLS work, but this is funded by Farming in Protected Landscapes, which if you're in the I can't never say it, ANOB, it's really great. If you're not in that area, it's not that great. So, and we've kind of been relatively savvy in that all of our hedges we've got funding for them. We've used some hedge planters, some volunteers, and we've put some in. The best hedge, it sounds very bolshy, but the best hedge that you put in is the one that you've put in, because you do it with a little tiny bit more love than anyone else is going to do on your land. But the fruit trees, I'm quite excited about the fruit trees. I think they add another dimension to the possibilities. And then we got really hit hard by the beast from the east in 2017, 18. And there was one field, we had sheep then, and we lost a lot of sheep in this field. And it was just a really exposed spot. So we're big mates with our Woodland Trust chap, Pete Leeson, who has got a really good podcast called Treeamble. Just in a moment of madness, we thought we'd put in a 5-meter wide hedge straight up the middle of a field. And we literally did the planning of it on the back of a cereal packet. And he gave us the trees, we did the fencing. And when we have farm walks and stuff, some people, it looks better now, but to begin with, some people thought we were really, really round the twist when we fenced this big strip off as a wide hedge. So that's what it looked like when we just planted it. And there's nothing more depressing than a load of plastic tubes. We've tried lots of cardboard tubes, wool tubes, and nothing. We've got quite a lot of deer, and nothing really works as well as the plastic tubes at the minute. I'm hoping that some whiz kid is going to invent an alternative. And that was that hedge on Monday. So it does require a bit of maintenance, and we've had to fence this off, and you have to remap everything. That's one of the stresses with putting all these hedges in. But this is really quite something now, and it's got lots of willow in it, lots of hazel, so it'd be really good for browse. The top wire of the fence is electric, so the cows can browse, and in time, obviously, the hedge will come over the fence. But it's the electric wire on top just stops them pushing on it too much. And this is my second to last slide. This is a picture that Danny Teasdale from Ullswater CIC took, and it just illustrates how mindset shift is really powerful. So this was a photograph he took, and years ago I would have said looks like a stream in a field, and I wouldn't have questioned it. But they fenced that waterway off, and a couple of years later it looked like that. And that's the kind of power of nature and the kind of transformative actions it can have. And I think farmers are they're up for stuff. Sometimes need a little bit of a shove, but I think there are lots of schemes out there at the minute we can get involved with. And I think that's my last slide. I'll just stop sharing.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. So, few kind of things. I remember that really wide hedge. That's the bit that really kind of stuck out for me when we came to visit your farm, that it was so wide that it had to have like a gate to go in. And I remember you kind of talking about how part of the idea of the willow on the outside is for the cattle, isn't it? So it's sort of, the hedge isn't just shelter for them, it is an extra kind of feed source as well.
Yeah. It's funny because they will, and James will talk about this, but when you move cattle, they'll quite often going into a field of lush grass, but on the way there, they will eat something off the hedge, or and they can kind of self-medicate. So the willow is particularly, I'm not very sciencey on this, but I think willow is particularly good at selenium and cobalt. And aspirin, isn't it? That's from willow. So they do noticeably go for it when it's available. And we're really low on selenium and cobalt in our soil. So we spend £10 every year giving the cows a bolus just to keep their levels up. So if we can try and buffer that a little bit in time, we might save that cost. Yeah, and it's for the cows' point of view. They're just eating grass all the time, and it's nice. We've got herbal laser stuff. It's nice for them to have a mixture. Otherwise, it's just like us eating potatoes every day.
Yeah. So part of your system as well is the mob grazing, and the cattle's go from different places every single day. And I know you kind of use like electric fences and things to kind of help move them. A hedge is a real kind of fixed feature. Do you find that is there downsides then to having that, or is it only kind of positives?
No, pretty much all of our fields now. We've just done another one this winter. I've got a hedge down the middle. So the ideal size for us is like a 2.5 acre paddock. But what we've done is we've put hedges down. So we've got maybe 5 acres on each side, and then we can subdivide with electric fence to make it into a four paddock field. What I would say is don't rush to put hedges in until you've kind of had a bit of a play with the system, because you kind of work out which direction the wind's coming from, how they like to graze. But it just works really well. The downside is it's just Renault spends a lot of time fencing. He's always fencing and faffing on with water troughs, and it's getting that infrastructure in place. But with the FIPL, you can get grants for that now. So if you're in an area for that, you can get grants. And also, it's also being wary of where footpaths are, and just working with those that kind of thing.
Brilliant. And then would you have any kind of, I know you kind of do a lot of talking to different people and different kind of farmers. What's your kind of key message if you had sort of like a young farmer who's just taken on a tenancy, who are kind of just looking at their farm going, where do I kind of start? What would be your kind of key starting point?
Well, there's loads of stewardship schemes out there. So if you want to put in a hedge, you should be able to get it paid for. And the payment rates are really quite good. So if you do the work yourself, you'll be paid quite well for doing that work. And also we're really lucky that we've got Pete Leeson with the Woodland Trust. He is, I think in the last 12 years, we've taught him a lot about farming. And he's a vegetarian, so I'm forever giving him jib about that. And so we've got quite a bickery relationship. But he's learned from us, and we've learned from him. And there's that mutual respect there where we can learn together. And like I'm still struggle on different what's the best tree, because we've got a lot of wood pasture as well. So it's just really handy to get someone who you can just ring up and say, give me a good mix to put in this field. And so that's and there's just and James will be the same. If someone wants to come and see the hedges, we're really open for that. They can just come. But also, when I go back home to Shropshire and the kind of Welsh borders, there's loads of hedges around there. Whereas, and as a farmer, you probably would, maybe if you're down there, get slightly annoyed by people banging on about trees and hedges all the time, because there's loads. But up here, it is super bare. So, and I don't see a huge amount going in, new hedges going in. So it's just chipping away and just encouraging people to have a go at it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I'll call you back in on the end for question and answers. So if everyone wants to have a think about questions for Nick, thank you very much. And we'll have a chat to James Robinson now. So James is well known for being a strong advocate for hedges. His cyclic approach to hedgerow management on his 300-acre organic dairy farm make him an important voice to listen to and learn from. But it's not just his hedgerow advocacy which has made James a legend. It's his whole approach to farming and working with the land. In 2022, James was awarded the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group's coveted Silver Lapwing Award, and that was for demonstrating outstanding commitment to good environmental practices, but alongside successful farm business. And that's what's key to James' success. It's his deep love for his livestock, his farm, and the nature, all of which can flourish at his farm near Kendal. So James, thank you very much. Would you be able to just paint us a bit of a picture about your farm and your farming system for us?
Yeah, I could quite easily. Thanks very much for inviting me and the Tree Council. Yeah, quite a picture of me stood looking wistful in the field. Yeah, so the other picture, the smaller one, is Dad laying hedges there. So that would be a couple of years ago we laid that one. The farm is 300 acres, 300 acres of owned farm. So we've been here since 1875. Next year's our 150th anniversary. So I'm the fifth generation, and our Robert is the sixth generation. So a 20-year-old son who's very keen farmer and keen hedge layer, luckily as well. So when we're hedge laying, three of us will go out and do it. So it's this generational thing which we're very proud of, really proud of our hedges and proud of the sort of tradition as well on the farm for looking after them. We've got about 7.5 miles of hedges on the 300 acres that we own, and then there's also 4.5 miles of dry stone wall as well. And we're very lucky, really, that the topography of our land has meant that we've still got a huge amount of our ancient hedgerows still in place. As much as 96% of those that were here on the sort of first general mapping from 1850s, 1841, I think, actually. When that was done around here, we've still got that 96% of hedges in place. And that's not as a gappy hedge, it's very much a living boundary that's doing really well as well. But we've got that amount, probably because a lot of the land is quite steep, so we're quite steep and banky, as we call it here. So the drumlins, if you remember from your GCSE geography years, and it's so I was going to close that. There we go. And it's but we're so quite banky, quite small fields, but really they are really well suited to the way we farm at the moment, which is we're organic. Been organic for 20 years, and we're on a rotational grazing system. So that means we're moving the cows around every day in a different area. So we want these small fields where the cows can have 1 or 2 days of grazing before they then move on to the next one to allow rest periods. So that's allowed us to grow plenty of grass for the dairy cows, but then the hedges are there rather than a wire fence as many people do with the rotational grazing system. So the old hedgerows are really doing really well within a modern rotational grazing system.
That's brilliant. Are you similar to Nick in that the cattle will graze the hedges as well and sort of pick off?
Yeah, absolutely. So we very much let them do it. So that hedge that Dad's on laying there in the picture, that will be double fenced. So we'll fence both sides of that. Probably about 1.5 meters from the centre of the hedge, something like that, maybe slightly more. So it allows the hedge to grow up without being nibbled off until it's got strong enough again that it then can take some browse. And tree, and hedgerow browse and tree browse is very much part of the diet within our cows. It's not something that's measured, so we're not measuring how much they're eating and the minerals and things that they're getting from that tree browse, like we would with grass. So we're measuring the energy and all that of the grass and the proteins and everything to try and get the diet right. Everything that they're getting from the hedges is on top of what we sort of plan, as it were. But I heard a fact today, actually, it was quite good timing. If we were to allow cattle to browse, to eat whatever they wanted, be that hedge, tree, grass, herbs, whatever it might be, they would get 20% of their diet from tree and hedge browse, which is huge. So if we were to allow them to do that, and the reason they're doing that is because there's things within that hedge that they want. Sheep, it's actually 35%, so they're even more. And goats would probably go with 100% if they could. Goats will eat anything. But we've fenced off these hedges from the cattle, or we've kept the cattle inside, and then we'll fill them full of, like Nick says, we'll spend money on a bolus to give them the minerals, or we'll give them wormer, because they need, for the gut health and things. Whereas in reality, if we were to plant a mix of species within the hedge, or allow a mix of species to grow within that hedge and manage them correctly, then salicylic acid is what willow has in it, which is like aspirin. So it's really good for like hospital fields and things, or dry cows, or anything. The cows can just go and eat that willow when they need it, as and when they need it. Really high protein as well, so it's good stuff for that. Then we've got all the tannins as well. So a lot of plants are high in tannins. Tannins is really good for gut health and stuff. So that cuts down on worms and stuff. So there's loads of things that we can, the cattle can eat from a hedge if we just give them the space and time to do so.
Fabulous. That's really fascinating. I know you do manage your own hedges through Hedge Lane. Can you just sort of talk us through a little bit of that kind of process, how you might kind of plan out how you manage 7 miles of hedges? You can't obviously all do it all at once. So can you just talk us through that kind of process?
Yeah, so we run a traditional hedge laying rotation for around our area anyways, of about every 20 years we lay a hedge. So that one that Dad's doing there, it's about 20 years since that was done. And that allows it to grow big and tall and wide as well. So it could well be, you can tell from these pictures there. So that hedge is probably somewhere in the region of, the tree there right in the centre of the left-hand picture, it's probably right to the top of that. So it's probably somewhere in the region of 5-6 meters high and wide. And then we take it right back to this almost meter square sort of size. So we're cutting out all the stuff down the side. We call that ridding out. So we're ridding out the hedge of the stuff that we don't want. So anything that's growing at 90 degrees out, that comes off. Anything that's growing outside of the line of the original hedge, we don't use that. That's taken away as well. And then we're left with, what looks like quite a narrow bit of hedge, really. So you can see on that left hand. So we've cut all this on the picture on the left hand side. We've cut the sort of the things that are growing on the banking off. And then what we're doing, some people call it pleaching, we call it ligging around here. So we're ligging it down. So we're cutting through on an angle, probably somewhere, probably leaving about 1/2 inch growing, as it were. So as all the life can come up that. We're leaning it over, quite a flat angle, our hedges, because they're quite big, tall plants. So we can't leave them on too much of an angle because they're like I say, 5-6 meters tall. And then we're using natural stakes as well down the side. So our style is a Lancashire and Westmoreland, get the right way around, style. So we're using 2 stakes alternately on either side. So we're just sort of staggering them down, really. And it's very much a style that's probably been developed because there's a lot of cattle around this area. So we need big sort of bullocky type hedges that'll keep cattle in, and it's cattle on both sides, whereas some styles they're just for maybe cattle on one side and arable on another, whereas in this area it's all grassland, so it's always going to be fit for cattle both sides. And it's really, yeah, so I mean, you see on that right-hand side picture there, that's a hazel bit there. So you can see they're all probably growing from one fairly small or fairly compact clump. So you get all the hazels that grow really, really straight, but they're really good to lig. But they don't provide as much of a sort of a bushy, stock-proof hedge maybe as what hawthorn does. But it's got its place. So we're very much use what we've got, and we've got a real sort of good mixed species in this area, really. Generally hazel, hawthorn, blackthorn, crabapple, and then there's all the other stuff like ash, or unfortunately some of that's of course got dieback, but then we've got oak and cherries and things like that as well. So yeah, we try and keep willow out of the hedge really if we can, because it's not great for hedges, but it's great to have some trees around for the cows.
Brilliant. And what made you decide to lay your own hedges rather than bring in a contractor or somebody else to do the laying?
It's something that we've always done. So I remember learning to hedge with my dad and granddad, and now it's now I'm the dad, and then there's Robert who's playing the part of me. So and if we go back to, so we've got some diaries from like the 1930s and 40s. My granddad and his dad, they're laying hedges that we're now laying. So it's that continual management. 20 years. It's a bit like painting the fourth rail bridge or whatever. You're never going to get to the end of it, because you've all once, as soon as you've sort of finished one, then you're going to go back to the start again. So we'll always sort of rotate that hedge laying around the farm as well. So we're never going to do all the way around one field in 1 year. We'll do one boundary on that field, and then we'll move. In the same year we'll do another one the other side of the farm or something, and then the next year we'll come back and do another one on that. So we're always trying to maintain a habitat in that field, in that area. So anything that was nested in that one boundary can then move to the next boundary and things, rather than completely blitzing those boundaries in one small area over a year. Try and just move it around. It's the same if we're doing anything like coppicing or something like that. Just do half a boundary or a full boundary or something, but then move it around. Don't do around one entire field within the same year. So it's really just a case of little and often in a lot of areas, really.
So are you currently laying hedges that you have been laid in your lifetime that you can sort of remember?
Yeah, as I say, yep. So we'll probably lay hedges 3 times in a lifetime. So Dad's, the ones that Dad's doing now, it's highly, I mean, he might do them again, but it's unlikely. He's mid-70s now. It's unlikely that in 20 years' time, maybe he'll be swinging an axe when he's 95. I don't know, put it past him. But the ones that my son's doing, he's going to get another two goes at them. I'm probably going to do them once more. So yeah, and you really, you come back, you think, oh, I remember that stock, blooming heck, that was a bad to do last time, and then you remember doing it again. So yeah, everything's yeah, you've got a bit of memories all around each field and each hedge. Yeah,
perfect. And I have to ask, because I can see it in the photo, about there's a hedgerow tree there. So there's a tree that you are left that's growing up. How do you decide which trees you're going to leave as hedgerow trees, and are you a fan of hedgerow trees as well?
So there's 2 trees on either side there. One, there's an ash on the left-hand side, there's an ash on the right-hand side, so they're probably both dead now. So some were planted. So if there was no tree within, say, 20 meters, something like that, we will plant a tree in there. And if there's a hedgerow tree, if it's growing right from the bottom, so it's not coming off a stalk, as it were, it's rooted right into the very bottom. And it's something that we really want to keep in there. So it might be an oak, it might be a crabapple. We've leaved holly as well. Holly's a real good tree for hedgerow trees, because it's green all year round, as well as you're getting all the shade and shelter from that. But then of course you got the berries and stuff as well. So different, if it's a different species than what we've got along that boundary, we'll leave it in. If there's nothing within 20 yards, we'll leave it in. And if it's growing, like I say, right from the very bottom, then we'll leave it in. And if it doesn't do any good, if in 20 years' time when you come to do it next time, you don't really want it there as a tree, you can always lig it in to the hedge. Or if it's really bad, you can always chop it off for firewood. You might as well leave a few, because they're going to do no harm at all. And you should always have a few hollies in your hedge, because hollies stop witches flying along the top of them. That's what.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Yeah, fabulous. Well, we're gonna have to wrap up that for now. We've got a few questions are already coming in, so I'll come back to you with questions at the end. So thank you very much, James. So just a few pictures. That's some of the regrowth as well. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker for you. This is Lucy Mason. Lucy is breaking the gender stereotypes of hedge laying. She's extremely talented in what's often seen as a man's world. Lucy is very natural for hedge laying, both in terms of how to read the hedge in front of her, but also with her axe skills as well. This paid off. She won the novice class in 2023 in the Lancashire Westmoreland National Hedge Laying Competition. And this year she got the best regrowth class, which demonstrates that her skills aren't just for show and looking pretty, as it were, but she's got that magic touch of being able to breathe new life into a hedge. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lucy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I've got to ask, how did you get into hedge laying?
So I grew up on a dairy farm over in Rathmell, which is North Yorkshire, and we were always, as well as like usual farm duties, a bit of hedge laying, planting, and one thing's another. And I've had various like agricultural jobs, and a few years ago, we sort of decided, I think I'm going to make a bit of a leap and have a do it, setting up and learning how to do it properly, because you can barely remember bits from your childhood, if you will. And I just wanted to go and learn with somebody that's been doing it a long while. So I went and shadowed somebody for a few days in our local area. He's a local hedge layer, and then I set off just doing it on my own, really, and sort of gone from there. And work keeps booking in, and I done a bit of planting, and then I, like you say, entered the competition in Downham. I didn't enter this year because I was too busy with work, but yeah, it's just gone from there, and I really, really enjoy it. I don't think I can see myself doing anything else now. It's just, I love doing it. It's just something I really want to do for as long as my body will let me, I think.
Hopefully, well. So you mentioned, I mentioned as well the competitions. What is someone looking for? What's a good competition hedge? What makes a really skilled hedge layer, as it were?
No, nothing needs to be pointing down. All your angles need to be up. You don't want any brash going down. You want a nice level hedge. You want no holes in your hedge, because it's, first and foremost, it needs to be stock proof. All your stakes need to be level. This is like one of the things that you sort of find out if you go to a competition, and it just needs to look nice and be what it's meant to be, which is stock proof. And sadly, I got a bit of a poor hedge last year. It were out of like all the other sections. I think mine was like smallest in growth, but I managed to make it look nice, which was, I think, the main thing for the day.
Yeah. So when you say about the sort of stock proofing and things, is that a real key consideration when somebody sort of books you, if a farmer or a landowner asks you to come and lay their hedge? Is that a kind of key thing that they really want, or?
Yeah, well, it depends really. It depends where you are. I go to some hedges, and they can be double fenced, and they probably want the fence taken out, and they think they'll have stock either side, so you'll have to make sure that you keep it stock proof. And if it's not ready to lay, if it's too young and they want it stock proof, then you've obviously got to leave it. But it's a big thing, really. A hedge is there for laid hedges there as a stock. It's stock proofing. But a lot of people, they tend to, let your hedge go, and then once it's laid, they will take the fence out. But a lot of people tend to keep it fenced in just to keep certain animals off, or to let it, grow up again. So
how long would it take you to lay a section of hedge? So I know the grants pay per meter, as it were.
yeah,
How long, or is it how long is a piece of string question?
yeah, it's a bit really. It depends. I mean, you can, like James was saying before, if you get into a good lump of hazel, you can fairly get braid on, especially if it's quite tall. But it depends. It's a piece of string kind of thing. It depends on age. It depends on the conditions. I mean, it could be you can't walk straight up to it. You're parking quite a way away, and then you're walking on, and it's it all depends. You can get I can fairly get braid on sometimes, and then other days I can't. It's one of them.
You sort of get into a bit of a rhythm, as it were.
Yeah, well, if you, especially with something that's young, you can really get into a rhythm. But then again, if you've got something that's quite old, it fills a lot of your hedge up, doesn't it, with size? So you can get braid on. It depends.
So if anyone's listening and they were really interested about getting involved in hedge laying, what would be your kind of top tip of how to kind of go about getting involved, or what they might need to know?
Well, they do a lot of local colleges. You can go and have a day course or one thing or another, but you can't learn everything in a day. You're best off trying to contact somebody. If you go on the National Hedge Laying Society contracts list, there's quite a few people on there, and if you type in your area, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people willing to teach. And you won't learn everything in 2 or 3 days. I know people that have been laying edges 30 years, and they're still coming across something new, that they've not seen before. I'd go and shadow somebody and learn that way. That's probably your best way to learn, and then have a do yourself, and you'll learn more on the job than you will, watching, or you will just going and doing a day's tuition. It's not you. You could do a really easy edge on the day's tuition, and then you go and find yourself on a quite a different hedge altogether. Like everything, all different plants laid differently. And if you've only gone and laid hawthorn, and then you're presented with something like holly, which is like fairly fine grained, you're gonna have a shock when you come to lay that. It doesn't lay exactly the same as a hawthorn or a blackthorn. You see, it's all different.
And can all species be laid?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could lay pretty much anything apart from elder. Elder doesn't lay well. It doesn't lay at all, really.
And would you take elder out? It's one of them sort of controversial hedge plants, as it were.
Yeah, we do take elder out, but unless the farmer wants it in, then I'll have to leave it in and leave it stood up. But it tends to take over the hedge, and it's you go to cut it out, and it's generally hollow anyway. So it's smothering everything else around it and not letting any light get to anything else. And if you think it's not really, to me and to people I know, they want hedges, they want the elder taken out of the hedge. It's for a reason.
Yeah. So what would be the best bit about being a hedge layer then? What's the bit that gets you up in the morning?
Being outside. And I go outside, and the stuff we see, the amount of deer I see. I was having my dinner a few weeks ago, and a stork come running up to me. I was sat sharpening my saw, and a little weasel popped out at Hedge, because it must have heard the rasping, and thought, oh, what's this? And it's just the stuff you see, and you're outside, you're in fresh air. There's no better for you. And I just go to work, and I bray on, and I have my dinner outside, and it's not so brilliant when it's raining, but I think being outside is the best thing for you. You can't get any. I couldn't sit in an office, and it's being, I think, having sort of pride over your work, and you see a hedge to begin with, and you think, oh, am I going to get that finished? And then when you get to your end of it, and it's all laid and it's all staked up and it looks well, I think that's like the best day for me is the last day really, when I can have a look and think, bloody hell, it's fair different now.
It all sort of comes together, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So would you want your sons to follow in your legacy?
I'm hoping so. They've both got a bit of an interest. They've come hedge laying with me quite a few times, and my eldest is fairly good with a billock, and he has a turn, and if we leave the billock in the car, he wants to bring it. My youngest is quite good at making a bed out of hedging stakes and sleeping on that, but he'll get there. I'm hoping they will. I'd like to one day for him to be hedge layers, and because there's hardly anybody wanting to do it anymore, and it's such a big thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think with all the new hedge planting that's going on, which is brilliant,
Yeah.
we're going to need a lot more people out there with those skills.
That's it.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, I've got a few questions coming in. So
Yeah.
if it's all right, I'll turn everyone's the camera back on,
Yeah.
and we'll all have a bit of a chat, and I'll go through some of these questions. So I can see there's a few people saying that they'd love to do it and love to give hedge laying a go. So I'll just go through. So we've got so yeah, we mentioned one for James and for Lucy. So I kind of already put this to you, Lucy, so I'll put it to James. So how many kind of meters can you lay in a day? We've got one that's kind of been asked. So
yeah, a good day for us, and we're doing it between milkings as well. So I know Lucy does it while kids are at school, so we're sort of similar in that we're doing it between milkings as well. So we haven't got a full day. We'll probably do, I don't know, how long's a bit of string again? Well, I don't know, 20 yards each. No, it wouldn't be quite that much probably. A good day for us would be like 25 yards, probably 25 meters, but we're doing this big stuff, so we're doing big rough old hedges, so 25 to 30 is a good day for us. And that's from probably 10 till 3, and then we're having to give over for milking again. So that's our trouble. If you're just hedging and you're just a hedge contractor and you're doing it from dawn till dusk and it's newly planted stuff, you can sometimes do a huge amount. We're talking, I've seen people reckon they can do like 100 meters and stuff of newly planted stuff, but yeah, you're really cracking on at that, right?
Brilliant. I've got one here for Nick. It says how stewardship is very prescriptive about the hedge width and the fencing you've got to use. And they wondered, how did you get agreement on funding for your super hedge? I think it's a brilliant term for it.
A super hedge. We didn't get any funding for that. So Woodland Trust paid for it, and it was just off our own back. That was so we had to remap it. Someone asked a question about remapping. So when you kind of change a field's boundary, you have to remap it with the RPA. Yeah, the wide hedge was just independent of any of the kind of
the actual stewardship ones. Yeah. So again, kind of probably linking into that is a few people asking about how once you've planted a hedge, what's your kind of immediate maintenance kind of regime? And it's probably be interesting to hear different people's your
so we do, you get an idea of how quite soon how well it's taken, and we've planted both in a sod cast and also straight into the field. The sod cast you just get a far better take, but generally the following year, so we don't, some people spray or use Roundup to kind of kill the weeds and stuff, and so they've got bare soil to plant into, but we don't do that. So plant it, and then the following year we just take out or sort out any that have died and then replace them, and then pretty much leave it. really. And then take the guards off, the spiral guards off, and then maybe we've started doing that a little bit earlier rather than leaving it too long, because otherwise you get these kind of spindly, the bottom goes quite spindly. So we maybe take those off at year 4. And then, so we're new to the hedging. So our oldest hedge is planted to 10 years old. So, and we've already laid one, which I talked to Lucy before, and we probably laid it too soon because we had a very keen hedge layer who was chomping at the bit. So I think we'll look to start laying them maybe when they're like, what do you think, James? 12 or 15?
Yeah, and I would say 12 to 15 is about right, but it depends where they are as well. So if they're at the bottom of a slope where you're getting all the sort of runoff, the nutrient runoff and stuff, and hedges are great for capturing that as well. They'll always grow better than something on top of a hill. So yeah, it will depend, and it depends on species and all sorts. But yeah, don't leave them too much longer than about 15, otherwise they end up getting too knotty, and you really struggle to get them pulled apart really. But and it also provides, you also, if you get them around that sort of 12-year-old, they're going to be real nice and thick, so they're a bit younger. You're going to get loads of really vigorous growth as well, and so it's going to make a real thick, dense hedge. And then next time you come and do it, it'll be even better. So
Lucy, they'll be ready for your lads.
Ready for my lads, yeah. Unless I've not retired by then.
Perfect. So I've got a couple for Lucy about tools and things. So somebody asking about recommendation for bill hooks, and you kind of where'd you get them, or the different sort of best types and things?
Yorkshire billock. It's a bit, well, to me, everyone's got different sort of styles, and the Yorkshire billock patterns they sort of become part of your hand almost, I think, after you've used them for so long. But you can buy brand new ones, and they're not the same. And the older ones are forged, and they sort of last longer. And I think it's same with anything nowadays. Any kind of tools like that, they were made better way back. But if you look you can pick them up on eBay. If you go to Car Boot, you'll probably find one in a toolbox there. But the Yorkshire pattern's what I use, and I use an Elwell, and they're a bit like hen's teeth now. But if you can find an Elwell, you'll be lucky.
Cool. And do you use a chainsaw at all?
Yeah, we've got a couple of chainsaws. So which you need really. We tend to use a billock on sort of hazel and chainsaw on bigger stuff. If we were just billocking all day, we wouldn't get much done.
Cool.
We don't actually use a billock at all. So we just use axes and chainsaw, but we've never have used billocks at all.
Right.
But it's just go on, sorry.
Whatever you've been taught with, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, no, and we actually got battery chainsaws which you could just pick up and put triggers. So really, and they're a lot lighter as well. So yeah, really cool.
Yeah, no, they're each their own, isn't it, I suppose.
Got one probably for all of you really. It's how you manage your hedges sort of in between laying. So obviously you've got the kind of laying cycle, but do you cut them? Do you recommend cutting them? So if I go for James, what you do on your farm, do you cut in between lays?
So roadside ones we flail, which we have to do for safety really. But we flail as late in the year as we can, so as late in the season as we can. So we're doing it in like mid to late February. So the contractor gets a bit jittery. It's not going to get it done, but he always manages. So we're always putting him off until then. So that's to give the birds as much time to get their, and mammals and everything that's using the seeds and nuts and things to use all them. The inside ones, or the interior hedges, of which there's a huge amount, we just leave. So we don't flail at all from the point of laying to the time they're done again, which a lot of people struggle with that really because they are big, wide, unruly. We call them scrowy hedges. But it's providing loads of habitat as well. And then you're taking it right back to this narrow hedge. So yeah, each their own, but we find that is really good.
And what do you find, Lucy? Would you rather somebody flailed their hedge in between flails,
No.
or would you rather they just what's your
No, I don't. I prefer it if they're left and they're tall, and then you can any gaps that you find you can tend to fill in with what height you have in the tree. I mean, it's not end of world if one's been flailed, but they tend to. You can sort of see where they stop growing, and they're thicker at one point, and then the new growth is quite thin. It's not end of world to us, but I mean, I prefer him left.
Yeah. And Nick, do you manage yours at all?
Yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, ours are still young, but I don't think we will cut them. I think that's the whole point, not to cut them.
Yeah.
Because they're just corridors that crisscross the farm. So yeah, the amount of stress has been to put them in. I don't want to cut them now.
Well, actually, like things like thorn and hollies and that sort of thing, they'll only fruit in the second year as well. So if we're flailing them every year, yes, you're gonna get some fruit, but you're hardly gonna get any. So yeah, same with with sloes and blackthorn stuff. So if you give them a chance to fruit, you get masses. You get absolutely masses and stuff like them, real riot of colour, like, so they won't just leave in really.
Brilliant. And really good questions coming around. What do your neighbours think? Are they all thinking, brilliant, I want to go with that? Or are they all looking over the hedge thinking, oh, I'm not too sure? What's your...
Well, our neighbours can't look over our hedges because they're too big. So I don't know. I think people have given up commenting on what happens at Strictly. So, but yeah, but everyone always just says how good the hedges look, and the mindset has changed a bit now from what it used to be. So the mindset used to be neat, square hedges, going back to like the 80s and early 90s and stuff. Whereas now it's somewhat big and healthy looking is far better, I would have said.
And Nick, are your neighbours, do they think
well, I think like James, I probably think we're a bit weird, but interestingly, we've got a neighbour up the road, Mickey, who's really good fun. But he said to Renault the other day, I think we're going to have to start doing some of that shit that you're doing. So that's positive. That is good. That's positive. So yeah, I think times are changing, but it's like if you're a farmer apart from James's dad, if you're a farmer in your 70s and you've done something a certain way throughout your whole career, and then all of a sudden there's a kind of want to, policy wants us to do things differently. It's not an easy change for them to make, but yeah, I think things are changing slowly, but people do think we're a bit weird, and probably rightly so.
So then final question is, what could we do more, do you think, to kind of encourage people to manage hedgerows positively? Any suggestions?
Yeah, well,
government could do?
I mean, hedges are an easy win for any family that's got a hedge and they've been flailing it, or there's always a way that you can improve the management of it. And I think hedges are an easy win for a lot of people to get into a different way of managing things on their farm. So that might be incremental cutting even. So you still want to flail it, but you can move, so you can move the flail up every 4 inch each year or something, or you can leave one unflailed for a year. You can plant new hedges, you can get them to grow wider. So a hedge is an easy way into doing a more nature-friendly way of farming. And once you see the difference, then there's no going back then. You've caught the bug. So no, I think just change something.
Fabulous. I'm afraid we're pretty much out of time there, as it were. So I'm gonna wrap up. I will say thank you ever so much from me and from everyone's listening. I can see loads of things coming through for the comments. Everybody's saying thank you very much, how interesting you all are, how engaging, and it's great to be able to spread the hedgerow message. We will, as to kind of play us out, I have got a poem that was written by a chap called the Testament, and he wrote it after visiting James and James's farm, and it's inspired by hedge laying, and it's inspired by James's farm. So I will leave you to listen to the poem. But yeah, do let me know if the sound doesn't work. But otherwise, I will say goodbye to everybody. Speakers are welcome to turn their camera all off. And thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers.
Tips in well-worn work gloves, sharpened chainsaw, heads crowned with caps so as not to snag on thorns. Pair of nippers lie on the grass beside a small sheathed axe. Dad, sideburns but clean shaven, and his lad, young, 19, moustached. Talk of managing these lands, the trees, brief chat, then proceed with the task at hand. Ligging. A tradition, a practice, encouraging growth in hedgerows, boundaries made organic between farmland's different zones, dividing those fields with different uses, creating that simple beauty of the distinctive English countryside that we all know. And so, the lig. Lines of undergrowth, overgrown, tangled with blackthorns, hawthorns, and two men standing, pruning misguided branches. It's the son who bends a hawthorn tree towards dad, who chainsaws then axes. Then the weight of them both, father and son, pull the tree downward, creating a lig. Laying it down, yet still connected to the stump. This vital link looks tenuous, but nature doesn't need much. Life, the sap, will always find its way up. Skillfully twisting boughs into breaks, cultivate a network of linking, artistically shaping, weaving a new lineage. Grandad turns up. They pass him the nippers, he passes them advice, tending more than 7 miles of hedgerows, linking much more than 3 lifetimes. An ancient tradition puts these on the cutting edge of the field. Renewed culture of agriculture, from roots to the fruits that it yields. These hedgerows become home to the hedgehog, the vole, field mouse attracting owls, tree sparrows, blackcaps, white throats, bugs, butterflies and bees, so pollen and seeds are cast on the breeze. A grandfather ligs a father, a son. They say love the little stuff and the bigger stuff will come. Sooner than you think, the lig turns green, moss and lichen, and with over 130 species inside them, the hedgerow shows when a barrier can be a corridor. For life to move through, build a hedge, not walls. And if you don't lig, if someone asks why, then you'd be left with a row of trees that would blow over and die. See, to lig is poetry, cutting and bending lines so new life will come. Inking with saplings across landscapes, collecting carbon, writing with hawthorn, blackthorn, and willow with cursive hand. A trio of landowners with the onus on the land. The lig is up, and they leave to go home, while these seemingly broken trees breathe new growth.